Good evening and welcome to the July meeting of the Salem Area Mass Transit District. This evening we have a full agenda. We have time for public comment, and then we have some items on our consent calendar which are basically minutes of our past meetings. And then we have two action items this evening. One is a budget committee appointments for subdistricts 2 and 4, and the other is to accept the preliminary annual end of the year fiscal year 2018 financial report. Then we will have the general manager's report and conclude with reports from our directors. And with that, I will call the meeting to order and ask Director Evans to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Linda, would you please take attendance? Are there any announcements or changes to the agenda? I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the board to send a greeting out to our absent board member, Jerry Thompson, and wish him a speedy recovery, and look forward to having him back here on the board working with us very shortly. So good luck to you, Jerry. And with that, we'll move on to public period of public comment, and David Bean has asked to speak. So Mr. Bean, we'll ask you to step up to the mic.
My name's David Beam. I'm a spokesman for all the disability people in Marion County in Salem. I think we need to do in 2019 and 2020 have Saturday service in Salem area, because a lot of disability people do ride the city bus and do go to dances on weekends. A lot of them can't go to the dances because they've got no transportation for them, for Salem area, for disability people who live in foster homes and group homes. So I was asking the board, will get Saturday service 2019 started, or to 2020 for funding for the program as soon as possible. Because I've been working with Peter Courtney and I'm working with the governor on this issue. And that's all I'm asking to do.
I might, any questions from board members? I might mention that Peter Courtney and the legislature have passed a tax or a new revenue stream for this agency, and it just went into effect in the first of this month, and we will be able to have some funds from that next year. And so this board is very optimistic that we will have Saturday service starting in September of 2019.
But I will do my best to get more money for you guys.
Mm-hmm. What? Oh, Director Kelly? Senior moment there.
Just one slight correction. The legislature passed funding for all public transit in the state of Oregon, not just for our agency. So it's not just for us, but hopefully it will allow us to provide Saturday service, because that's why we haven't been providing it, was a lack of funding.
And the other question I'm asking, the board will get Saturday service for the state fair, and it will be, because Saturday service, a lot of people come downtown, and a lot of them have to walk. You gotta realize that. And a lot of seniors have to walk. Some of them can't get nowhere because they got no service.
We understand that, but we cannot spend money that we don't have. With
Well, I know that.
With this new funding, we should be able to have some Saturday service in the years that you talked about, 2019 and 2020.
And I'm thinking that this board need to go to the legislature and ask for that and get more funding for it. You might run out of money, then how are you going to get services then?
Well, this is a continuing funding source once it takes
I know.
effect.
I'm just saying that what happens if you don't have any funding, then you'll be in a mess. Mm-hmm. I'm just asking. Please do it.
Well, we will address that. We appreciate your concern and we appreciate your support. And I think your time is up, is that right?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for speaking. But we are working on getting Saturday service started. Is there anyone else in the audience that would care to comment at this time? If not, we'll close the period for public comment and we'll move on to the consent calendar. And do we have a motion to approve the
I
consent?
move the consent calendar.
A second?
And it's been moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And so we're into our action items, so I'll call on our general manager to introduce the first item, budget committee appointments.
Thank you. So the first item on your agenda tonight is to reappoint two existing citizen members onto the budget committee. Both citizen members, Mike de Blasi and Bill Holmstrom's terms expired on June 30th. They both have extended interest to continue in that capacity. And as you know, by state budget law, we're required to have 7 members, citizen members on the budget committee. So that will, if you approve that tonight, that will give us a complete budget committee membership, which should be important, as you know, because we will be engaging the budget committee for service expansion. So based on the recommendation of Director Bush, who represents Subdistrict 2, and Director Rogers, who represents Subdistrict 4, to reappoint Mike de Blasi and Bill Holmstrom into their existing positions.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the reappointments of citizen members Michael de Blasi and Bill Holmstrom to the Budget Committee for a 3-year term that ends June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Moved and second. Any comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, and the motion carries. And we'll move on to our next item, which is accept the preliminary fiscal year 2018 financial report.
So I'll ask Al McCoy, our Director of Finance, Chief Financial Officer, to present the report.
Good evening, President Groves and members of the board. It's my pleasure to present the preliminary year-end financial report. As you know, the year ended June 30th, 2018. These are very preliminary numbers because we are still working on a number of entries that occur after the year as standard accounting practice. The audited reports will be prepared and presented to you later in the fall when that work is done. The preliminary report includes the statements for our 3 funds, the general fund, the transportation programs fund, and the capital projects fund. The financial statements for each of these funds, as they stood when we ran the preliminaries, are included in the memo in your packet. So the detailed numbers are there for you to review. They compare the budget amounts to the actual amounts by the appropriations category that were adopted by the board for the fiscal year 2018 budget. I want to again mention that there are transactions and adjustments that have not been made yet, and these types of things are examples included are depreciation of assets, year-end accruals for vacation and sick leave, the last 5 days of payroll, year-end revenue accruals, various expense adjustments. So for instance, the year-end accruals for payroll and benefits, there's the payroll that was paid the first week in July the 7th, included the last week of June, because we pay every 2 weeks. So those 5 days have to be accrued as an expense for FY18. They are not included in these numbers because it had not occurred when we ran these numbers. But there are those types of situations that aren't shown yet. They will be included as we finish up the audit. So with that, I'll go into the presentation. And the general fund, the first main fund that we work from, where all the divisions operate from, the revenues were at 93% of appropriated budget. The expenses are at 98% of appropriated budget. So we're in good shape there in total. Within the general fund, we do appropriate by department or by division. And so just briefly, you can see these divisions and how we were all very close to our budget numbers at the preliminary close. There's some variance there. General manager about 5%, administration 4%, finance right at budget, marketing is below budget, transportation development right at budget, transportation just slightly over 1%. And the unallocated general administration is only at 74%, and that's mainly because there are adjustments and expenses that occurred after we ran the preliminary that will increase that number. But we should still be within the appropriated amount for the general fund. Moving on to the transportation program fund budget. The revenues there are at 74%, and the expenses are at 79% of appropriations. The primary reason the revenues are at 74% is the same reason that we have lower revenues in the general fund, and that is that we are still finalizing the final quarter of the year for our federal grants. So we're filing for reimbursement and drawdown on our grants. And those, when they are in the system, then we can accrue them. But until it's gone through the TRAM system and FTA approves the drawdown, we can't account it as a federal grant receivable. Within the Transportation Programs Fund, the two departments that have funding are Transportation Development and Operations. Transportation Development is at 96% of their budget, and Operations at 79% of their budget. Primarily, that is Operations at 79% is an issue with DMAP and WIVIC going away during the year. And I think the appropriation included a full year's worth, and we eliminated the program prior to that. And then finally, the Capital Project Fund, we expended 18% of the appropriation for the Capital Projects Fund. And as you may recall, during the Budget Committee meetings for this year's budget, FY19, we did talk about the inability to get some of the projects done, and so staff has budgeted most of those again in FY19 and carried them forward, so they will be completed in FY19. But this is pretty standard for us at 18%. We hope to do much better when we report to you next year for the fiscal year end in 19 with the Capital Project Fund budget. And now if there's any questions that you might have about the preliminary year-end financials, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
It's pretty normal.
Do we have a motion then?
We just accept it. I move the board accept the FY 2018 preliminary year-end financial reports as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to our next item, which is our general manager's report.
Great, thank you. I do have several items this month. First, if you recall, last year I shared with you that Cherriots was selected as the one of the 2017 Portland Business Journal's Healthiest Employers of Oregon in the 100 to 409 employee category. Well, I'm happy to say we were selected also again in 2018, and so we'll be recognized next month. They will recognize the top 10 award winners in each category and announce the rankings and see who's number one. Can't remember where we ended up last year, but hopefully we've moved up a few, eighth, so the goal is to be 7 or lower for next year. So a testament to the Wellness Committee, and actually we just had, I think it was Safe who was in here doing a video on our wellness program, and we highlighted some of the big losers, those that really changed their lifestyle and improved their physical stature. And so that's exciting for Cherriots. In addition to that, you have previously made lots of actions to buy new buses. I'm happy to say those buses are trickling in. We have our regional buses. You may have seen one of those already out in service. We have some new paratransit buses, and just this week we've gotten 4 of our new Cherriots buses in the yard. So the Cherriots buses won't be in service for a while yet. We still have 8 more to go. We have to get them street and service ready, but that's exciting to see them come in. They look beautiful in my opinion, and it's exciting to see them. For being the summer, I've been pretty busy on the road. So since the last meeting, I attended the ODOT's annual Public Transportation Advisory Committee's field visit in Klamath Falls. We held our meeting down there. I also attended the APTA's Mobility Summit in Washington, D.C. Really, it's the kickoff of APTA's ongoing conversation about how transit districts are going to change as the future progresses, especially with new technology and new service provider, kind of moving from that mass transit perspective to personalized service, and how TNCs and microtransit all gets integrated and what the future is like. So it was a great kickoff and discussion day. Certainly more to come, as it's a major focus of APTA over the next year. And as part of that trip, I also spent an extra day doing delegation visits. Didn't want to go there for a one day, so I was able to meet with staff of our 2 senators and Representative Schrader's office, just to keep them in the loop on what's happening with Cherriots. And I also, last week, attended the APTA's Small Operations annual planning meeting. As you know, I serve as the vice chair, and I am expected at the September annual meeting to be moved to the chair position. The current chair has accepted a new job, which is at a larger agency. He's no longer eligible, and so by the bylaws, I move up to the chair position, which comes with a seat on the APTA's executive committee. So that's, I think it will be exciting, but I'll let you know once I get into it. And with that, I'll also put out an email next week, but I'll be taking some vacation in August, and so we have our normal plans with David as the GM Pro Tem during my absence. But that's it for my report.
Well, thank you. I guess I'm up next, and I will say that this has been an easy month. Last month I had a lot of hours. This month I don't have too many because it's summer and a lot of the meetings that we attend didn't happen. I did attend the Kaiser Chamber of Commerce luncheon because Director Bush, who usually attends, was out of town, so I did it in her place. And it was a very nice event, and they installed the new officers for the next fiscal year. I also attended several neighborhood association meetings, and it was nicer this month because both the Salem water crisis and the Costco were off the table, so there was a little time to talk about transit. Yesterday I attended the Association of Oregon Rail and Transit Advocates meeting in Portland, and there was a lot of discussion about how to sustain funding for not only the urban transit systems, but also for the inner city services, and they're looking at ways to get funding for those things. But it was a quiet month, but I see my calendar starting to fill up for August, so I'll be busy again. This next week, this next weekend, I'm going to go over in Eastern Oregon and ride a couple of the tourist trains over there. So that's sort of one of my hobby things that I do. And we have some service changes coming up, and so I think this would be a good time to talk about some of the improvements that we're going to have starting on September 4th. We're going to have some improvements at Chemeketa Community College. We're changing the locations of some of the bus stops, and so the routes 3, 12, and 13 will be rerouted to serve a new bay, which will be much closer, about 400 feet from the bay that serves routes 2, 11, 10X, and 20X. That'll make it easier for riders to transfer. So if you use any of those routes, you should look at the changes that'll occur on September 4th. That's the first day after Labor Day. Also, Route 13 will no longer serve Wainema and Lancaster Boulevard. That's the Building 52 stop, but riders will be able to access the area by using the stop at Lancaster and Wainema. It will no longer form a loop on Wainema South Campus Loop, so just check that out. And then there will be more frequent service to South Salem, because we're improving service with the development of the Amazon property out on South Lancaster and Almsville Highway. We will be having more frequent service out in that area. So check the number Route 11 service for that improvement. And with that, I'm going to call on Director Lincoln for her report.
Well, I've been gone all but 4 days of the last month, too, so I didn't do much around town here. I did attend the SCATS meeting, SCATS Policy Committee meeting on Tuesday, and we're still dealing with one of the goals of the new Regional Transportation Plan, the environmental goal, and there's been some reluctance by one of the committee members to add a consideration of greenhouse gases when we consider other environmental impacts of the transportation system. So because of that one holdout, we're still negotiating the environmental goal, and if anyone's interested in weighing in on whether we should consider what the transportation, how the transportation system impacts climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, if you're interested in that issue, you can go to the SCATS website and comment on the proposed environmental goal. Maybe we can move this forward a little bit. The other issue that was important for Cherriots is we had the chair, the chair was asked by Salem Transit District to sign a letter clarifying that several streams of funding that we've received for our technology upgrade for the Intelligent Transportation System project. We've received 3 different funding streams, and we asked the chair to clarify that we can use all of those for one project. It's not 3 different projects, but it's one project, so it gives us flexibility, and we can have one contract for the Intelligent Transportation System project, which is our overall ITS project. So the chair, Kathy Clark, signed that letter and allows us to go ahead and get FTA approval, and then we can move forward on that project. So that was a big move. And that's it.
Thank you. Director Wilkins.
Well, between being out of town and neighborhood association meetings being canceled for July, I attended none. I spent most of my time with fundraising projects for West Salem Rotary, which were very successful, and I really had a good time doing that. Other than that, I came to this meeting and talked to Representative Evans' assistant, Evan, about some issues in Independence, and they talked about the bus situation there.
For a few minutes. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Director Kelly?
Well, like everyone else, it's been sort of a quiet month. The Mid-Willamette Area Commission on Transportation normally doesn't meet in July, and so it was canceled because we normally don't meet. And like everyone else, most of the meetings have not happened. Like Director Evans, I do have a life outside of the Cherriots board, although I don't know whether I have a life or not because I've been spending a lot of time for my Kiwanis Club fundraiser. So I will take this opportunity to remind people that 7 miles north of town, there is an event called the Great Oregon Steam Up, and if you want to see any kind of old steam engines, you can find them there, and there are lots of people showing people around, showing things, and our Kiwanis booth has. Our Kiwanis Club has a food booth, and I have been co-chair of the food booth this year with one of my other Kiwanis members, so therefore, very busy.
Yes, Director Rogers.
Yes, well, besides the regular board meeting and the executive session, I would have had neighborhood associations to go to, but most of them said, hey, it's summertime. So we decided if there is a lull in what you're doing, then you stir the pot and you do something about it. So we decided that when the city invited the neighborhoods in my area to go to Brown Road Park so they could show what they're going to do, the neighbors decided to have a picnic at the same time and invite as many people as we could. I put on my transit hat and cooked hot dogs on my barbecue and just got to know constituents. And let's see. Oh, and the other thing is I was at a restaurant feeding my face, having, some good food, and I met up with someone who feeds the homeless under the bridge on a regular basis. And my wife and I thought, we're having good food anytime we want to. Let's reach out to those who might need some assistance. And so we're going to be there next week feeding people, and we're looking at getting our youth group involved in the community to make our community a better place to help people. So, and that's what we do here. I want to expand that out.
Thank you. So that includes all our reports. Does anybody have anything else for the good of this board? Then we are adjourned.
Not quite all right.